Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sarah Schweiger, and welcome to today's training. To start, please type your name and the courses you normally teach into the chat, and this will help me get a sense of who's in the room today. Thank you for coming. And while you're doing that, I've posted two quick polls. The first asks, how often do you encounter student work that appears to use AI? And for the second question, which of the following concerns do you currently have about your students using AI in your courses? Now for this one, feel free to select more than one answer, and if it fits, and if you don't see an option or you want to add more to your thoughts, use the chat to share your thoughts. And in a few minutes, we'll refer to your responses. We'll take a look at them. Okay? And so while you're doing that, I thought that I would take a moment and talk about what we will be looking at today. First, we'll review common challenges instructors face when students use AI in design assignments. That's kind of what you're doing right now. You're kind of like, yep, I'm experiencing it. Let me tell you how it's happening. Next, I'll share practical strategies, or what I call guardrails, to guide students toward responsible AI use and help us teachers support and strengthen classroom learning. Then we'll do a quick demo in Adobe Express to show how AI can support us instructors design presentations when we have a very short amount of time. And finally, we'll explore opportunities to integrate AI into our own assignments effectively. Okay? Now, let's take a look at the poll results in your chat comments. Thank you for completing that. Yeah, so I think it's very clear that many of you are already seeing AI in student work. And I think that there seems to be a common takeaway, and that is foundational skills are essential, and students must learn to build concepts and compositions and visuals manually before using AI. Yes, absolutely agree with all your comments. Yes, all of those. Yep. And I think there seems to be this common theme of over-reliance on AI, and I think that as instructors, I think we have this fear that using AI reduces originality in the students' work. So these are all real challenges affecting us instructors daily. And that's why I think that this presentation or this training really guides us in a particular direction. And that is why I think structured guidance matters. Before we get started, I thought it might be helpful to see some research that I learned at Adobe Max in 2024. These are the top ways AI can improve learning. And so as you may think about AI, brainstorming and ideation is a big one. And as graphic designers, especially, our students are going into the creative field, and, we are only as good as the original ideas that we bring to the table. So that brainstorming and ideation could be a real help for our students and also for us as creatives, right? And I think we also have to address another elephant in the room, which is why we can't just out and out ban AI, because trying to ban AI completely just usually fails. We've already noticed that with the feedback that we saw earlier, right? Students are already encountering these tools outside of class and currently using them for our assignments. And the more effective approach, I think, is the structured guidance, that teaching students to use AI responsibly so it supports learning rather than just simply replacing the fundamentals. We need to teach discernment, and I have a few suggestions on how structured guidance can work in practice. The first one is ideation. We just saw that as a very high skill set to have, as well as how do we incorporate that using AI. So one way would be perhaps letting students use AI to generate initial ideas before starting the original design work. And then having students submit both their work and what AI offered. Another idea is that, as students grow in their design responsibilities and learning how to use the software, and then ultimately designing for real clients, and AI can just do that. They can simulate client interviews so that students can uncover the needs for the app or website projects. Another way is visualization and production support. So there are other tools in the Creative Cloud, such as Adobe Firefly, and Adobe Firefly can be used for brainstorming, but it also can speed up mockups without replacing creative design decision-making. Social media and motion design, AI can draft posts, captions, or animations, letting the student focus more on refining that visual hierarchy and messaging once a design has been built. So it's teaching the students that discernment that's really important in the process of graphic design. All of these examples give students a taste of what AI can do while still prioritizing the skills and development side. Now that we talked a little bit about how we can help our students, let's also talk a little bit about how instructors can use AI too. So one way instructors could use AI is in the feedback and assessment. So for example, generating sample critiques or annotating student work. Another one would be curriculum design. So brainstorming ideas for lesson variation or project ideas. I know a lot of times we are working and doing the same projects year in and year out. And so by giving AI a little bit of information about our class and saying, hey, can you give me a variant of that exact same project, but using a different theme? AI could give you some great options for that. Another one is, one of the things that I notice about my students is that students will go through the process of completing an assignment, but they didn't quite grasp the ideas. And so by choosing AI to create practice generation, that helps create additional exercises for students who need that little extra support. And then finally, instructional content. And that is exactly what I'm going to be demonstrating today. Quickly generating slides, visuals, or examples to illustrate design principles. I recently had to teach a course I hadn't touched in over 2 years. I didn't have any updated materials and only had a few days to prepare 4 weeks of content. So one of the tools that I turned to was Adobe Express to generate a presentation outline and then a full presentation with a single prompt. And so what I have here today is I actually have Adobe Express on my screen, and I'm going to demonstrate that process that I went through when I had a really short amount of time to prepare for the class. And what I want to do is think about how I started out the process. There's a couple of things that I want to prompt Adobe Express with to kind of constrain the project. So generate presentation will be the next thing that I want to click on. And then this begins the prompting, right? First, I want to define the task. For week 1, I needed an overview of the course. So I want to start out by giving a little bit of information on that. And I actually have a pre-written statement here. However, it doesn't have to be perfect when I type this information in. I could just give it the name of the class. I could also, the second thing that's very important is giving AI some information about the students or who the target audience is. This is very important because, again, we want to explain to AI who we are presenting to. That's very important. So first task, the second thing is audience. I could put some other information about the audience in there, and I could say something like, hey, I want to make sure that the information about the project is it's intended for beginner to intermediate students, because this is a 200 level class. You see that right here in the design, right? We're going to go ahead and make sure it's intended for beginner or immediate students. Again, narrowing down, doesn't have to be complete sentences, but just giving it some information. You could even use like bullet points if you wanted to. I may also tell it like some information about each of the weeks, because I want to create a 4-week presentation. I might want to give it some information about each of the weeks and what we're going to cover. So now we're giving it a task, we're giving it an audience. Now we're starting to give it some information about constraints and detailed information so that it can kind of fill in the slides for us a little bit, right? But we also want to think about things like style and constraints, like, hey, how many slides should we make? Should we make, 100 slides, or should we make it, 5 to 7 slides, right? So again, I have some information here. I wanted to use like clear headlines, concise bullet points, things like that. Those are all what I would call style information, right? And then follow that up with some constraints, such as, hey, can we make sure that this is only going to be, 5 to 7 slides? I don't need a gigantic presentation, but something like this would be really nice. Okay, so now that you've got your prompt in there, let's go ahead and hit next. Scan through these and see which one looks the nicest or feels like it could be the best look. I kind of like this one. It's nice and bold. And as I mouse over them, it's giving me like a little preview of what all the slides already look like, but it's going to take my information and put that in here. So I'm going to go ahead and click this one because I like this one. And then we're going to hit next. And then what it does is it gives me an outline. This is fantastic, right? An outline of what each slide is going to cover. And if I missed a slide, or if I want to add a slide, I could add a section. So you can see how powerful this tool is, right? So next I'm going to do is I'm going to just tell it to generate, because I want to see what it can come up with. So let's go ahead and do that now. And while that's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and come back over here to my presentation. Remember, strong rubric criteria clearly define what the student must do, what evidence they need to provide, and the level of quality or clarity expected. Now it's your turn. Think of one assignment you currently teach. Identify one opportunity where AI could support learning. And some options to consider are, just like what I showed you, a presentation approach. How could AI help create instructional slides or visuals? Or what about how you could use AI to demonstrate a graphical technique that could be done a little bit faster than you normally would the old-fashioned way? So now that we talked about that, let's go ahead and jump back into our project and let's see how it did. So let's take a look at how it came out. Now, one thing though that I may want to do is include some examples of previous student work, right? One of the things that I prompted it to do is I did tell it that at the end of the 4 weeks that the students are going to be creating a poster. And while this picture is very interesting, students aren't going to be able to write on a board like that. They're going to have to create a digital version of a poster on their computer using the software that they've been learning up until now. So at first glance, I feel like this presentation looks very complete, but subheaders are a little harder to read on the screen. I might want to make the body copy here a little bit thicker, right? And so I think this example, what I'm demonstrating here, we have to think about the importance of the human judgment. Again, the photo, great photo. It really catches my attention, but I might want to actually show some examples of student work in this. And that might be something really easy to find after I've created this simple slide presentation that I can just throw in here and even replace this photo. They have this replace button that works really, really well. So while it gets my information in a real organized manner, and it also has a nice layout and a nice flow to it, we really need to think about here that AI is fast. It's, for the most part, pretty good quality, clarity, and alignment with learning objectives. But remember, AI amplifies skill, but discernment remains human. And I think that this example really shows you like how that all comes together. And let's take a look at some of the examples that you thought about. John says he would choose all main weekly assignments, okay, where they're applying what they have learned. He would provide them with a critique prompt to use and have them upload a screenshot of their completed assignment along with the prompt to receive a critique on how well their work aligns with the assignment rubric. Okay, so that really is good. It's coming together. This would allow them to receive outside feedback that does not come from their instructor, but more than likely aligns with what their instructor is saying. Kind of like when your mom says you did something incorrectly and you don't listen, and then your new best friend says the same thing and it makes a difference. AI is the best new friend and we are their mom. I would then have them summarize the changes that AI recommended and submit both the before and after feedback version for grading. How smart is that? Using AI to assist in the critique as a second form of feedback. Fantastic work, John. And Tara says she would have her students use AI to write a detailed AI prompt with a minimum of 1 paragraph, okay, that clearly communicates their concept, story, and target audience. Then iterate on that prompt to generate multiple outcomes and select one direction to develop into an original event poster design. Tara is clearly describing what the student must do, what evidence they must provide, and the level of quality expected from their work. Now that we've just practiced finding an opportunity where AI could support learning, I'd like you to complete our assessment to further help you think about using AI. So think about a second course you currently teach. Now think about completing the prompts below to demonstrate how AI could support student learning in one assignment. Be sure to start with including the course name and assignment. Then briefly describe the assignment you currently give your students. Explain one way AI could support the learning process in this assignment, and then write one guideline or instruction that clarifies how students are allowed to use AI in the assignment. Finally, write one rubric, guideline, or evaluation criterion that explains how student work will be assessed when AI tools are used in the assignment. Remember, good rubric criteria clearly explain what the student must do, what evidence they must provide, and the level of quality or clarity expected in their work. All right, everybody, thank you so much for completing that assessment. Before we wrap up, I want to personally thank you for coming to today and participating in our training. I felt like your participation really helped shape this whole training, and I think that it gave us a lot of great ideas to think about and to take back to our classes. If you will, please take a moment to complete the evaluation form I just sent to everyone. Your feedback helps us make future trainings even better. And thank you so much for your participation today, and take care. Until next time, everybody, take care.